I have two great guests joining me here to kick off the show. Andrew Weissmann is the former general counsel at the FBI. Julie K. Brown is an investigative reporter for the Miami Herald, responsible for breaking the Epstein story wide open all the way back in 2018. There are no two people I'd rather be talking to at the start of the show tonight. I'm so grateful to both of you. Andrew, let me just start with you. I know you've been pouring through these documents, the ones that have been released. They've only been searchable for a couple of hours now. Let me start by just asking you to give us your big picture take on kind of what happened today, and what we know, if there's much new we do know.
Well, I think that you hit the nail on the head with the first thing that we know is that the law was violated. I mean, it's just black and white. The law said this is the deadline, as Chris Hayes spoke to you about, and they didn't comply with it. And one of their excuses is, well, you know, this is a complicated process and it takes a lot of time, and so we'll be complying with at least part of this going forward. And then the other big picture point I had is, remember in September, the Department of Justice issued a memo saying there's nothing to see here in the 300 gigabytes of material that is in the Epstein files. Well, if there's 300 gigabytes of material, I think I would take issue with we've now been disclosed 10%. I don't think the hundreds of thousands, I never do math in public, but I would say that, 300 gigabytes and, hundreds of thousands of documents don't compute. We really do, by the Department of Justice's own admission, just taking their own statements, have a tiny sliver of what they have.
Well, I think the Justice Department is apparently counting on the fact that the victims, don't know what's in the files, when in fact many of them do know exactly what they told the FBI and exactly what are in the files. Also, there's a lot of attorneys that have been affiliated with this case that know what the FBI knows, and virtually none of that information was released today. You mentioned a couple of documents early on in the broadcast, this letter about the roses, and those materials were from the 2005 search warrant that was issued on Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. And so those materials were recovered way back then. They are part of the public record. So again, these are documents that they're throwing out there that sound interesting. They're not putting them in context, when in fact they could clearly note that these are part of that early investigation, and they don't. They just throw out these documents all jumbled up, so that in the hope that people won't figure out that, they're really kind of pulling a switch here with saying we're being transparent, when in fact they're only digging up old material and kind of tossing it in a bowl and throwing it online.
Welcome back, guys. When I first heard about this, I honestly stopped and thought, how is this even possible? We are talking about the Department of Justice, the most powerful law enforcement body in the United States. And now former officials are openly saying it may have broken the law itself. This is not a small accusation. This is about the Epstein documents, something the public has been asking for years. Andrew Weissmann, who used to work at the FBI, is clearly frustrated. And honestly, it shows. He says the DOJ was legally required to release these Epstein files by a specific deadline. Not a suggestion, not a request, a law. And yet, the deadline passed and nothing meaningful happened. According to him, this is not just incompetence, this is a violation of the law. What really stands out is that the DOJ had years to prepare. Years. This was not a surprise deadline. This was not something that came out of now here. They knew this law was coming. They knew what was required, and they still failed to comply. That raises a serious question. If ordinary people miss a legal deadline, there are consequences. So, why should the DOJ be threatened directly? Another shocking point is the claim about data size. The DOJ has said it holds around 300 gigabytes of Epstein-related files. That is massive amount of information. But when you look at what has actually been released to the public, it is just a tiny fraction. So the obvious question is, where is the rest? If transparency is the goal, why are people only seeing scraps? Then Julie K. Brown steps in and her comments make the situation look even worse. She has been reporting on the Epstein case for years, and she says much of what was recently released is not even new. A lot of it came from a 2005 search warrant and has already been public for a long time. That means the DOJ is not really giving the public new information. It is recycling old material and presenting it like something fresh. She also points out something very important. These documents are being released without proper context. When information is dumped without explanation, timelines, or clear labeling, it becomes confusing instead of helpful. It creates the appearance of transparency without actual delivering it. And that can be just as misleading as hiding documents altogether. Another big issue is the way these files are being released. According to Brown, the system is difficult to use. The search tools barely work, especially for photos. That might not sound like a big deal, but for victims, journalists, and investigators, it is huge. If people cannot easily find information, then access is basically being denied without officially denying it. Now, here is where things get really serious. Weissmann explains that there are actual legal consequences for ignoring a congressional state. Congress can hold hearings. There can be impeachment proceedings. And yes, there is even the possibility of criminal prosecution. That is not political drama, that is how the law works. What makes this even more important is the state of limitation. Weissmann says it is 5 years. Then that means even if the current administration changes, this issue does not just disappear. Accountability can still come later. Time does not automatically protect anyone here. This entire situation sends a very dangerous message. If the DOJ can ignore the law, delay compliance, and face no immediate consequences, then what does this say about the rule of law in America? Laws are supposed to apply to everyone equally, especially the institutions that enforce them. People are not asking for secrets that could endanger national security. They are asking for transparency in a case involving powerful individuals, serious crimes, and victims who deserve answers. Every delay, every half release, every technical obstacle makes it look like someone is trying to protect something or someone. And this is why public trust keeps dropping. When institutions act this way, people stop believing official statements. They stop believing press releases. They start asking harder questions, and those questions do not go away. This is not about politics anymore. This is about credibility. This is about whether laws mean what they say. And this is about whether justice applies at the highest levels or only to regular people. At the end of the day, the Epstein case is not going to fade quietly. The documents will keep being demanded. The pressure will keep building, and the longer the DOJ delays, the worse this looks. Because when the agency responsible for justice starts acting above the law, the real question becomes simple and unavoidable. If the DOJ is not accountable, then who really is? So thanks for watching my video. I will see you in the next video.